Following the disastrous 16-14 defeat at home to Northern Illinois, Notre Dame fans are now clamoring for a quarterback change. Let's start first and foremost, guys. I have been on record, and I will continue to say this after the defeat this past weekend. Riley Leonard played very poorly for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in their home opener against the Northern Illinois Huskies. But I do not agree that he is the lone problem. On Twitter, on YouTube, I have continuous to see this take that if Riley Leonard didn't play, if it was another quarterback on the roster, Notre Dame would have won the football game. They might be right about that. But the part that I completely disagree with, someone said if you bench Riley Leonard now for one of the young quarterbacks, Notre Dame runs the table, finishes the year 11-1, and then we restart this conversation in the playoffs in the 12-teamer and see what they have when they can finally put, hopefully, the talent together. I completely disagree with that notion. If you pull the plug on Riley Leonard, the players that most Notre Dame fans that I have seen, true freshman CJ Carr, I want to see redshirt freshman Kenny Minchey. But let's be real for a second, folks. I just wrote about this at A to Z Sports. Make sure to go check out my thoughts on making a potential quarterback change. Marcus Freeman has shown us so far in his tenure that he is not going to turn the keys over to a true freshman or redshirt freshman at quarterback. How do I know that? Look what he's done each of the last 2 off seasons as the full-time head coach. He has gone to the transfer portal. After going with Tyler Buckner, who was looked at as the future during his first season and not choosing to bring in a transfer, Notre Dame opted for a transfer quarterback in back-to-back years. Sam Hartman last offseason, Riley Leonard this past offseason. Clearly, this staff, Marcus Freeman and everybody else involved, maybe it's just Marcus Freeman, but either way, Notre Dame has chosen experience over young, under youth. They could have started Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey last year, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted Sam Hartman, a 6-year senior who had a ton of experience and had a ton of production at his previous stop at Wake Forest. This offseason, you could have just had a battle between Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, CJ Carr, but Notre Dame didn't want to do that. They wanted to go to experience, to a 4th-year player in Riley Leonard, a guy that has started now 3 years in college football, including this year. Clearly wants experience. So where is Marcus Freeman and this staff going to go if they make a quarterback change? It's not going to be to CJ Carr. I doubt it. It's not going to be to Kenny Minchey. I doubt it. Where they're going to go is to Steve Angeli, who was the main backup last year to Sam Hartman and was also the starter in the bowl game against Oregon State, where he completed 15 of 19 passes for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns. But my question to you in the rebuttal on people that would be okay with Steve Angeli is, what has Steve Angeli shown as a quarterback that makes you certain that he's going to create explosive plays in the passing game? What, the one decompletion of Jordan Faison last year, where there was a mishandling in coverage and a coverage bust, where nobody was in 15 yards of him? That is the reason that you believe that Steve Angeli is the answer. And not only that, if you're not able to create explosive plays with Steve Angeli either, the rushing threat that he brings is nowhere close to Riley Leonard. So not only would you not be able to create explosive plays, you also wouldn't be able to create explosive plays in the run game either. So ultimately, I do not think Steve Angeli is the answer. The only part that I do think that has some merit is if Notre Dame fans are like, hey man, Riley isn't good enough. We need to turn the next page. We need to go with the young quarterbacks. That is a much more stable argument in my opinion, because right now I am very positive that one of CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey is going to be the future of Notre Dame football 2025 and into the future. So if you believe that this team is not good enough right now at the quarterback position long term, then fine, turn the page. I do think that's slightly misguided because you're 1-1. You've played 2 football games, and that basically says we're building to 2025. 2024 doesn't matter anymore. And that is a very defeatist attitude. I do not like that train of thought at all. But if you do go for one of the young quarterbacks, the positives, both Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr are very talented. I do think that they bring upside to the table. I also believe that both of them have arm strength and the arm talent to push the ball down the field and create some explosive plays. I think all those things are true. But you know what I also know? because the one thing that I continuously heard after this past week was Riley doesn't take care of the ball. He threw 2 interceptions, including the interception that ultimately cost them at the end of the game. Well, what do you think a young quarterback's going to do? I believe that CJ Carr has the ability to be a great quarterback at Notre Dame. I also think that if Kenny Minchey becomes the guy, he has very good talent as well, and he could become a very good quarterback at the University of Notre Dame. But they're young quarterbacks. Kenny Minchey threw, 3 passes last year? CJ Carr has yet to step onto a college field in game action. And I am supposed to be certain that they're going to go into the football game, 1, be able to create those explosive plays, and 2, take care of the football? And by the way, they're also not the rushing threats that Riley Leonard are either. So I believe that the future is bright at the quarterback position, but I do believe that it is going to be hindered. Ultimately, this conversation comes back to, for me, I don't think they should bench Riley Leonard right now. If he continues to not play good football, then I will be able to entertain it and think that that might be a strategy that you need to have going forward. But right now, after 2 games, I am much more worried about the trajectory of this offensive football team for the long term. I'm not even talking about 2024 as much right now. I am talking about, simply put, Notre Dame offensively has been a sporadic, run-centric team for several years now. The passing game has been the spot that has not been good enough at the University of Notre Dame. And what have I seen so far that has convinced me that that's going to change? This offseason, you hired Mike Denbrock as your offensive coordinator. You got a dual-threat quarterback who had been successful at Duke when healthy. You got talented wide receivers like Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins and Jaden Harrison to go along with the freshman wide receiver class of Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, and Logan Saldate that you just brought in. Despite that, Notre Dame hasn't changed. They are still a line-driven, run-centric team. When you ask about values to Marcus Freeman of his football program, he's going to talk about offensive and defensive lines. He's going to talk about running the football. He's going to talk about being careful with the football, and he's going to talk about playing great defense. When does he talk about dynamic ability behind center? He never does it. I love Marcus Freeman, the person. I am still hopeful for Marcus Freeman, the future, as the Notre Dame head football coach. But until that offensive philosophy changes, it's not going to matter who's under center. At most, it'll mask the self-imposed ceiling that you are putting on at the University of Notre Dame. So an offensive philosophical shift needs to happen, not a quarterback change. Despite this frustration, love you all. Go Irish.